Welcome, everybody, to episode 22 of the Off the Wall Hockey Show. It's a hockey show for hockey fans. We have playoff action well underway now. The first round just about coming to an end here, and the second round is going to be starting up. We already know 2 of the 4 matchups in the second round. Still waiting on the other 2 to see who's going to be moving on and who's going to be hitting the golf course. But there's been a lot of great playoff action to talk about here as we're going to kind of look back on the series that have ended, look at the ones that are still going on, and then look ahead to the 2 and preview the 2 that we know will be coming up next round. So, as always, I am joined here by Steele. Steel Flyers All Sports Network, the show, a big part of that, as well as so many great others here. Steel, thank you so much for being on again. Really, really appreciate it. And ready to talk some playoff hockey?
Oh man, I'm starting to like the playoff editions of the Off the Wall Hockey. I think we should just start doing that, just calling them the playoff editions.
Yeah.
Right? And then once we get to the finals, we'll call them Stanley Cup editions.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Right? Yeah, hey, well, I get them every once in a while. I'm doing great, man. How are you doing? You've had some great streams that you've done this past week, man. Some great games. A lot of good stuff coming out of Off the Wall Hockey, man. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Excited. We got a big Game 7 coming up tonight, our first of the playoffs. Those are always crazy and a lot of fun.
Exactly. It's hard to imagine, though, that this is only the first Game 7 that we're going to get.
Yeah.
Okay. We did our brackets and everything like that. And for the most part, I think the first rounds, almost every game I had either selected as 6, right? For the most part, there was like the one series that I had for 7, but there was no others that were slated for 7 games in the first round. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I'm quite surprised that we're getting this Game 7.
Yeah, I had a few more in my bracket. I had a lot in 6 or 7. I had quite a few 7s, but a lot of these series have finished up a little bit quicker than I was expecting. But the second
at least
round,
the Boston-Washington one did.
Yeah, that's for sure. But the second round, you get more of those matchups. You get 2 teams that have already won a series, and it seems to get closer and closer as the playoffs go along.
Exactly. And that's the most exciting part about it is the fact that these games have already been close. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Carolina and the Nashville series, and with the exception, I think, of the first game, all the other games have either gone into 1 or 2 overtimes.
Yeah, they played 4 straight overtime games. Games 3, 4, 5, and 6 for Nashville and Carolina all went to OT. Some of them went to multiple overtimes. And, that was a crazy series, and we're going to certainly be talking about that one here in a little bit, as well as all the others that we saw happen in the first round. But we're about ready to get started here. I do want to give a shout-out to our sponsor and a big, big thank you to Canine Country Club Resorts. They've been on with us for quite a while now, and we really, really appreciate all the support from them. And, it really means a lot, and not just for this show, but everyone here at Steel Flyers and for all of the work that we do, which we're very, very grateful for them. So a big thank you to Canine Country Club Resorts. But I think we're about ready to get into it here. Steel, we're going to start by reviewing the series that are over. We know who won. They finished. We're going to start with one, Boston and Washington. This was
really?
Fairly
We're
quick.
Start with Boston
we talked a lot about this one last week, so I want to kind of do this one kind of quickly because there hasn't been a whole lot that's changed since last week. The Bruins and the Capitals finished up in 5 games. Boston getting the win, moving on to the second round. And I remember last week talking about how the Capitals just didn't seem like the Capitals, and that certainly felt that way in the last game as well, where the Bruins and the Bruins were just kind of, after winning that double overtime game, they just kind of completely took over the series, and Washington almost kind of just mailed it in and didn't really bring the effort that I was expecting in games 4 or 5.
Backstrom didn't show up.
Yep.
Had 0 points. Ovechkin had 2 goals and 2 assists. Oshie had 1 goal and 3 assists or something like that. Mantha had 1 and 2. Yep. Right? Okay, that's your big lines. That's everybody. What? Your big guns didn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't have really mattered, to be honest with you, whether or not Boston took over the series after that double overtime. Capitals weren't showing up.
Yeah.
This was going to be a short series anyway, because Capitals weren't showing up. Okay, I mean, when the guy that has the record and all that for goals and stuff like that, blah blah blah, and he doesn't show up in the postseason. I think he was hurt, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
He came in missing games, limping in.
Yep.
And so I think he was hurt. I don't know what anybody else's excuses were other than the fact that they played up against Boston. I mean, you have to give credit to Boston because.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I mean, they shut down the people that they needed to shut down.
Yep.
Mantha and Oshie and Backstrom and Ovechkin. Okay, I mean, I also think that Washington's goaltending kind of let them down a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big mistake was Samsonov in double overtime behind the net when he let Craig Smith come in. Him and Schultz had the miscommunication, and Craig Smith came in and it was able to wrap around the game winner there. And that was kind of the deflating point of the series
yes,
for the Capitals,
I agree.
Washington wasn't really in it after that happened.
Right.
That was kind of the end of the series right there. Boston goes up 2-1, and then they come out and they really just crush the Capitals in Game 4. And then Game 5, we did that game together, and we were waiting for that push from the Capitals, and we were waiting for that all-out, just desperation, going for it for Washington to try and get themselves back into the series. And they had a little bit of a stretch in the third period where you were like, okay, here's what I was expecting from the Caps.
But, and they had some in the second period too.
Yeah, they had little stretches of it, but it never happened in the first, and they didn't come out of the gates flying like they should have. And they just, after that double OT loss, it really seemed like the Caps were just done.
Exactly. In fact, you touched on it right there. When they didn't come out of the gates flying for that Game 5, there was no way. There was no way you're going to sit there and tell me that Washington was going to win that series. There's no way.
Yeah. But on the other side of things, though, I think Samsonov did play very well for most of that series. He made some massive saves to keep the Capitals in games. And he had, I think, a good series with the exception of, obviously, that really bad turnover. But the team in front of him just wasn't there. There was no support for him whatsoever. The team in front of him didn't show up. I was talking on my Bruins show we recorded yesterday with my guest that was on, and we were like, the Capitals' best players were their fourth line. Garnet Hathaway, Nick Dowd, and Carl Hagelin.
Seriously? Really? Dowd and Hagelin?
Dowd, Hagelin, and Hathaway were the best players for the Washington Capitals in this series. And when your fourth line are your best players, you're in trouble. And when your top guys don't show up, it doesn't really matter how well the fourth line guys play or how much they produce, because when your top guys aren't there, it's really hard to win a playoff series, especially against a good team. And Boston was able to shut them down. The Bruins were able to score enough goals. It wasn't a spectacular offensive series for the Bruins. They scored, 3 or 4 goals each game. It wasn't like they're putting up 6 on them, but they didn't need to because they played well defensively. They shut down the Caps. Tuukka Rask played very well in goal. He got better as the series went along. After a little bit of a shaky Game 1. After that, he was lights out. And Boston just kind of took it to the Capitals in a way that I was not expecting. I thought this series was going to be a lot closer.
See, I know how you are, man. You're such a deeply devoted, passionate fan, but you're so ultra cynical.
Yes.
Right? So like I did exactly. I pulled a John and I picked Nashville to win last night.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Knowing full well that the reverse jinx was going to happen. Right? Because every team that I pick, they don't win.
Yeah.
Right? So I thought, all right, I'll pick Nashville 4-3. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but, I think I agree. Washington did not have any sense of urgency, especially in Game 5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're playing at that particular point in time, you need to be able to do that, and they just weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
Their big guns weren't there. Their top line was their fourth line. No, that's not how you need that to happen, especially with the names and the skill and the ability that the Capitals possess.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And this is the other thing too. Peter Laviolette was supposed to be brought in here to help Washington get over this hump.
Yeah, and that did not happen.
And and I think it actually regressed. Like, they got worse. Wow. I mean, I'm just calling it like I see it. You know what I mean? I mean, the fact that your guys didn't show up for this series, I mean, that's what Laviolette was brought in here to do. I mean, they had a great regular season, and at one point they were leading the division. But, when push comes to shove, when rubber meets the road and you need to, show out in game 5 because you're facing elimination and you don't show out.
Yeah.
That speaks about coaching too.
It does. And it's a very Capitals thing to do, honestly. I mean, we look at what they've done the past couple years before this year. Last year, they got swept in the first round was it 5 games? 5
Something
games
like
to the Islanders. Yeah. They lost, I think, in 5 to the Islanders in the first round last year. That was another very short series. They lost in 7 the year before to Carolina, when Carolina was, just starting to come into their own. They were not supposed to be a team that was going deep into the playoffs, and they knocked them out in round 1. Obviously, they won the Cup in 2018, but what we've seen from the Capitals since then is almost like the early 2010s Capitals teams that were always kind of known as being great in the regular season, but
win the President's Trophy.
Yeah.
Win the President's Cup and then out in the first round.
It's like the Bruce Boudreau Washington Capitals are back here. And they're doing the same old thing that they really only got away from for that, 1 year where they were finally able to go all the way under Barry Trotz, but they're getting back to that out in, great regular season, top team in the regular season, one of the best in the league, and then you get to the playoffs, and rounds 1 or 2, you're gone. And that's what we're seeing here with Washington, and I don't know what it's going to take to fix it because, they've tried different coaches. They've tried, to make trade deadline moves. They've done that pretty much every single year. They've made significant moves at the trade deadline, and it seems to be the same thing over and over again.
Honestly, I never thought that Ovechkin was going to win a cup in Washington because I never thought that he was going to be able to either A, have a team around him, or B, be more of a team player, not always worrying about getting 50 goals a year and worrying about playing the game. Mm-hmm. When Trotz came in to coach, he started playing the game.
Yep.
And then he was still able to score that many goals. And he became even more dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I didn't see that per se this year out of Ovechkin.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have this definitely wasn't one of Alex Ovechkin's best seasons. There's no doubt about that.
And look, I get it. It's COVID. It was only 56 games. There was no practice. I get it, but still. Tampa's doing it. Florida's Colorado's doing it. Vegas is doing it. All these other teams are doing it.
You got to wonder if this is going to be kind of the start of the slowdown in his career. I mean, he's in his mid-30s now. He's like, 35 years old?
Finally, we hit the wall here with Ovechkin.
Like, he's in his mid-30s now. It's not going to last forever, and you got to wonder, this was a little bit of a down year for him, even in the regular season, and certainly in the playoffs. I mean, yes, he had 4 points. He had a couple of goals, but he wasn't nearly the game changer that the Capitals needed him to be. He wasn't the superstar that came out and grabbed this series by the horns and took his team and carried them. He wasn't able to do that.
2018.
Yeah, no, at 100%. This Capitals team, I mean, as a team, they're getting significantly older, and you got to wonder if this is when the slowdown is going to start. And we've seen it, I think, with these first-round exits the last few years.
Yeah. It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
You get old. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, But very excited for Boston to see them moving on. Going to be looking forward to the next series that we're going to talk about here a little later. But
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited for that one. And speaking of the team that they're going to face, we have another series that, man, this was one of my favorite series to watch in the first round.
it was exciting.
It was really fun hockey to watch. The New York Islanders and the Pittsburgh Penguins played an incredibly entertaining first round series.
I agree.
think I watched, 5 out of the 6 games I got to see, and they were just absolutely awesome.
I only got to watch 3 of them, but
yeah, Islanders beat the Pens in 6, and this was an upset. Islanders were the 4 seed. They were not playing well heading into the playoffs. Pittsburgh was fire. The team that won 11 out of their last 15 games, entered the postseason as the top seed in the East, really was playing good hockey, and the Isles just came in. They were able to steal game 1, and I think that kind of shifted the series quite a bit. And then that set the Isles up to have a chance. And then Sorokin and Jarry, what a tale of different goaltenders in this series. This series came down to goaltending. Came down to who was able to keep the puck out of the net. The Islanders could, the Penguins could not. And that's really, I think, the story of this series, as the Isles were able to come away with the 6-game win.
I agree with you, too. And I like what you touched on that first point. Because this was the only way, that the Islanders were going to be able to do this, was to come out and punch Pittsburgh in the face and win that first game. Because that first game was in Pittsburgh, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. Here's something else that I would like to point out, too, over the course of this series. All right. We saw Jeff Carter emerge as quite the star for Pittsburgh, which he hasn't really had much playoff success since 2016, so congratulations to Jeff Carter. Unfortunately, we didn't see much from Malkin. I think he had 2 goals and 3 assists or something, or 2 assists. And the same thing from Crosby. We didn't really see much from Crosby. 2 goals, 2 assists. Crosby was
extremely quiet in this series.
When you're going up against an Islanders team, you need to have that Gensel, Rust, and Crosby line firing on all cylinders. And that just wasn't the case.
No, the Islanders were able to shut that line down very well in this series. And again, that's the great defense of New York.
You know what I mean? Yes, exactly. With New York and how New York has played against them, that was amazing. I really appreciate how New York played against Pittsburgh. They're a Barry Trotz team. I mean, come on. You know they're going to be defensively sound first before anything. I also agree. I think Sorokin played freaking amazing, and Jarry just didn't.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't like to, I'm not one to ever blame goaltenders solely, because there's obviously a lot else that goes on, and you have to take into account the defense in front of them, and there's a lot to take into account. But Tristan Jarry probably cost the Pittsburgh Penguins this series. His play was, it was bad. He was bad in this series, especially in the later games. Obviously, the giveaway that led to the turnover in Game 5 in overtime, or double overtime, actually, that just put it on the stick of Josh Bailey.
Can't be doing that.
Absolutely brutal. One of the worst turnovers that you could possibly see in an NHL playoff game. And just gave the puck to the Islanders for that win. And then obviously he played very poorly in Game 6 as well. He came out and really couldn't get a big save, gave up some really bad goals. The Penguins kept getting leads in that game.
I know.
And they could not hold it. Every time they went up by a goal, the Islanders would come down and tie it right back up. And Jarry could not get a big save. His life depended on it. He couldn't do it. And then obviously, the Islanders ended up taking the lead. They went up 4-3, and almost immediately he let an extremely weak 5th goal that put the Islanders up 5-3, and at that point, that pretty much put the game away.
Those 2 goals in 13 seconds.
Yeah, brutal.
Games,
absolutely brutal.
Well,
very rarely can blame be solely placed on a goaltender, but in this case, a lot of the blame falls on Tristan Jarry because he was terrible in this series and not nearly good enough for the Penguins to win. And this series came down to that.
Yeah, was it game? I'm trying to think if it was game 3 where the Islanders scored 4 consecutive goals on the glove side.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly which game it was, but his glove hand was awful all series. I mean, I remember game 1, the first 2 goals, high glove every time. And that was a trend that carried on throughout this series. Obviously not every goal, but there was a lot of goals, high glove. That has clearly become the weak spot there to shoot at. And he couldn't make the adjustment and fix it.
How do you not just I don't understand. I mean, you're a professional athlete making a lot of money. I know you train, and I know you had a day off, days in between games. And I imagine, and I'm hoping that your goalie coach came up to you and said, "Hey, Tristan, maybe you could raise that hand up a little, or open it a little longer."
I don't know.
I
don't think his glove hand is quick enough, and I think the Islanders were able to figure that out and take complete advantage of it.
See, that's the key right there. The Islanders were able to look the tapes out on him now.
Yep.
So if he's going to want to continue to be successful in the NHL, he's going to need to fix that, because if not, then it's not going to be long and he's not going to be playing in the league.
Yeah, that's not something that's real. You can't just go, "Oh, I'm going to fix that." Like, that's something that you're going to have to put a lot of work into and try and figure that out. And but it's clearly the spot to shoot on him, and that became very apparent in this series. And he just, the fact that he just gave Game 5 away the way that he did, the fact that he didn't really show up in Game 6 and could not get any saves that they needed him to make to keep the lead, it's that cost Pittsburgh this series. And obviously there were other issues for the Penguins. I mean, Sidney Crosby's lack of production, the whole top line's lack of production was a big problem. I still don't think their defense, when you look at that D-core, it's not that great. It's a very middle of the road D-core. That's an area I think that they can improve in the offseason, where they need to get another high-end defenseman in there, somebody who's a little bit more of a defensive defenseman, because that would certainly help with that team. But when it comes down to it, I think if they had gotten better goaltending, they would have won this series, and they didn't.
Without a doubt, without question, because I think that, and I think I did a we're doing an eliminator series, the teams that have been eliminated, and we talked about Pittsburgh, and they're going to be looking to do a lot of things here in the off season. They're not calling it the rebuild. They're calling it the retool.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And unfortunately, I think you're going to have to see a big name is going to have to disappear from Pittsburgh, and it's not going to be Crosby.
That's for sure.
Because Crosby's got 3 years left on his current deal, and I guarantee you, man, he's going to retire a Penguin.
Oh yeah, he will be a Penguin for his entire career. Absolutely.
I mean, with the way he was brought in from Lemieux, he was drafted by Lemieux. He was brought in. He lived in Lemieux's house for the first 2-3 years he was in the league, right? That was Lemieux's boy.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's not going anywhere.
No, definitely not.
Right. All right. Well, there you have it, man. And that means now that the Islanders are going to face Boston on Saturday night at 8:00. And
that's going to be fun. That's going to be fun.
It is starting to get intense.
Yes.
Like it. All right.
Yeah. Well, can't wait we'll talk about that. We'll preview that coming up here later in the show. That is going to be a really fun series, without a doubt.
I agree.
But
we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, we'll move to the Central now, because both of those series are wrapped up now, and the first one to end was the Tampa Bay Lightning over the Florida Panthers in 6 games. This was a series that I thought was going to go 7. Tampa Bay was able to figure it out in 6 and get the win here. Very exciting series overall, especially early on. lot of animosity between these two teams, which obviously just ramped up the intensity level tenfold and made it extremely fun hockey to watch. Lots of big hits, lots of scrums, really a ton of after the whistle stuff happening in this series. Lots of really kind of dirty stuff going on in this series. These two teams absolutely hated each other. But Tampa Bay, led by, their top guys like Kucherov, like Stamkos, like Braden Point, Victor Hedman, obviously Vasilevsky in goal, who didn't have the greatest series, but obviously was good enough to get the win, and got a shutout, pitched a shutout in Game 6. So
yeah,
I think he got better as the series went along. But
I agree.
Just a really fun series to watch, and Tampa was able to come out on top. And Florida, I mean, they were better this year than I certainly expected them to be. I think they were a lot better than most people expected them to be. They had a really good season, but just not able to get by the defending champs.
Do you know what? I think if they would have matched up against Nashville, that would have been a better series for Florida.
Yep.
I think they would have probably have taken that series.
I agree with that.
Here's the thing. I completely underestimated Tampa Bay. I actually had Florida as my sleeper team to try and take Tampa Bay in I believe I had it five games. So I do apologize for all Tampa Bay fans out there. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to dish your team. I just thought that they were going to be a little bit overtired, and I thought that with Stamkos and Kucherov not playing at the end of the season there, I thought they were going to come in rusty, and I thought that Florida was coming in hot.
Yep.
They were the higher seed in this series. That people forget that. Florida was the number 2 seed and Tampa Bay was the number 3 seed. Okay. Here's an interesting stat for you folks. In the first 4 games of this series, 341 hits.
That is nuts.
341. That's a season. That's 2 seasons for a player. Right? So the first game there was 86 hits, second game 79, third game 90, fourth game 86.
Wow.
That's 341 hits. Yeah, you could say this was a physical series.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, just in case any coaches, GMs, or teams are out there listening and wondering and watching, you see what Tampa Bay did? They out-physicaled Florida. How do you do that? Well, you get guys that bring physicality to the table. Well, if you're going to need to win a Stanley Cup, you're going to be able to have to go up against the likes of a physical team like Boston, like Tampa Bay, like Carolina. All of these teams all are physical, hard-hitting teams.
Yeah.
Finish checks, whole nine. Colorado and Vegas are the same.
That's how you got to win, and that's how you got to play in the playoffs. Playoff hockey is a whole other level of physicality, a whole other level of nastiness, and you got to be able to play that way to win in the postseason.
You can't poke check a guy. You have to hip check a guy. You can't try to olay the stuff. You got to smash him into the boards.
Yeah.
Right? You can't try to out-deke somebody for the puck. No! You put them on their butt. Guess what? You have the puck now.
And Tampa, I mean, they're one of the most physical teams in the league and one of the toughest teams in the league when you look at that roster. I mean, Coleman, Gord had huge series. Maroon played well. On the back end, guys like Chernak, McDonough, Shen came in for a few games. Like, those guys are all very, very physical players. And they had to come up big in this series because it was a very physical, nasty series. It felt like a rivalry. And,
it was great.
It was incredible to watch. It was hockey at its absolute best.
This was the best series to watch. Because this felt like, old time hockey.
Yeah.
Where you were constantly, all right, you two in the box.
Yep.
All right, you two in the box. Well, it was just 30 seconds later. I mean, before you know it, there's 6 or 7 guys in each box. Wait a minute.
There was so much 4-on-4 play during this series because guys were getting coincidental minors. Like, it felt like a good part of this series was being played 4-on-4.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That's another thing too, where you look at some of these series across the board, right? And you see like the Nashville, Colorado or Carolina. In one game, there was 7 penalties against Carolina and only 3 against Nashville. And then that same night, there was the Edmonton Winnipeg series was playing, and there was only 1 penalty called in that game. Yep. 1. Look, I'm not advocating that, anything bad, but look, I understand the refs have one of the toughest jobs in the world, but if you're going to put the whistles away, then put the whistles away. If you're going to not put the whistles away, then do it. Give it to me the same every night.
Yeah.
Don't go into one building and go, man, I am calling everything. And then the next night you just go, put the whistle right back in the old pocket.
It depends a lot on who's refereeing the game. Every ref calls it differently.
That's the only thing I cannot stand. That's the only thing I cannot stand.
Very inconsistent.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But this was one of the most exciting series, this Tampa Bay, Florida.
It was a lot of fun to watch.
Man, and, look, I agree. He didn't play his best. He let in a lot of goals.
Yeah, I want to talk about the goaltending in this series because I think that played a big part. And
oh boy,
Vasilevsky.
I knew we were going to step into this pile.
Vasilevsky did not have his best series, but
no, he didn't.
There were certain games where he played really, really well.
Yes.
There were other games where he definitely didn't look his best, but obviously in the last game he played very well. Got the shutout. And, I think overall Vasilevsky, I think, is a guy that's going to get better as these playoffs go along. Yeah. And, I think Florida was able to get some goals, and he did give up a decent number of goals, especially early in the series. But
first couple games, he was giving up, 4 goals a game for the first couple there, and that's not quite his level.
No, but I'm not worried about him though going forward. I think, and Florida's a really good offensive team. That's another thing that people got to take into account is that Florida is one of the best offensive teams in the NHL this season. They score a lot. So the fact that they were able to put up goals in the playoff series isn't all that surprising. But I do expect Vasilevsky to get closer back to his Vezina level Stanley Cup winning Andrei Vasilevsky that we've seen in the recent years, and I think he's going to be better in the next series than he was in this one.
I agree 100%. I think that Florida was able to get into those dirty areas and get those goals that he was normally stopping during the regular season. Florida was able to get those goals because Florida has a good offense, and frankly, their defense is not that bad. The problem is that this is the big pile that we're going to step into. A big, giant, steaming pile of it, if you must know the truth. The fact that you had to bring Spencer Knight in to help save your butkus, that speaks volumes of the goaltending that you currently have on your roster.
Spencer Knight is the best goaltender on the roster for the Florida Panthers.
That's full stop right there. Like, you don't even need to say anything else after that.
Like, he should be the starter next year.
Boom.
He should be the starter next year.
Yep. Because let's face it, Drager is probably going to be gone.
I would assume so.
Right? Seeing as how Bob is still signed for the next, 25 years.
Seems that way,
at $10 million, right?
Seems that way. I mean, just brutal contract there with Sergei Bobrovsky.
I think it's 5 more years left.
He has 5 left on that deal.
Well, that might as well be 25 because he's gonna that's.
Well, they're gonna be paying him for 8 to 10 when they buy him out because that's coming soon at some point here.
So you think that's you think that's really what's going to happen? Because
I don't know if it's going to be this off season, but at some point he's getting bought out. There is no way he finishes his contract.
I agree because there's nobody going to take that contract.
No, you can't trade it. Nobody wants that deal.
Nope. He
is, nothing like he was in Columbus.
Or even Philadelphia for that matter.
Yeah, he was better in the regular season this year than he was last year by pretty good, significant amount, but just got lit up in the playoffs.
That would be putting it mildly. That would be putting it mildly. And I think he basically took himself out of the mix because Drager played better throughout the year. Like, because Bob came out of the gates like floundering. Like, he didn't play well at the beginning of the year. And Drager came in and just kind of took over that number one spot.
Yep.
And then Bob was sprinkled in occasionally, and he started playing a little better.
Yep.
And so as he started playing a little better, he got more games.
Yep.
Know what I mean? And then they were getting there towards the end, and they were like, well, let's see what Spencer Knight can do. I'm with you, though, man. Spencer Knight, they're the best goalie on their team right now.
I'm so high on Spencer Knight, and I mean, you didn't really, if you're the Florida Panthers, you didn't want him to have to play in these playoffs because he's still young, just coming out of college, rookie goaltender. You did not want him to have to play in these playoffs, but with the way that the other two played, you didn't really have a choice. The only shot you had, and the only reason that this series even made it to 6 games, was because you put Spencer Knight in and he was able to win in his first game and extend the series. And he played well in Game 6 as well. Like he that could have been a complete blowout game, but Spencer Knight was able to keep Florida in it. They just could not get any offense going.
He made 1 or 2 little rookie mistakes that allowed goals to be scored.
And that's going
in the
to
last
happen.
game. In the last game. Right? Because I think in Game 5 he played phenomenal. Okay. But I think he made a couple of rookie mistakes that anticipation, if he would have anticipated that a little sooner or a little later, maybe that goal wouldn't have been scored. And I think a more seasoned goaltender would have done that. You know what I mean? And I think that just comes with experience. Nothing against the kid at all. I mean, I watched this kid play World Junior Championships and have a performance that I have never seen. He had 3 shutouts in a row, or almost 3. He had two complete shutouts in the World Junior Championships, and then almost a shutout towards the end there of the 3rd game.
Wow.
Okay. So the competition that's going on at World Juniors, and they won the gold medal.
Yep.
Okay, and they were able to do that on the back of Spencer Knight.
Yep.
Because he had those multiple shutouts and went multiple games without allowing a goal and facing, 30, 40 shots per game. Okay, so the kid's got, but you're right. He should not have been the one that they should have relied on to win that Game 5 to stretch this series out.
But yeah, that's the situation that Florida was in at that point, and their goaltending was just not good enough, and their defense was also very brutal. There's another,
porous, we could say,
another issue with this team, and it really wasn't in the regular season, which was kind of the big upgrade for the Panthers. Because if you looked at the Panthers team from 2019-2020, they scored a ton of goals, but they were one of the worst defensive teams in the league. They could not keep the puck out of their own net, and then one of the big reasons that they were jumped up to being one of the best teams in the league this year and competing for that Central Division was because they remained one of the best offensive teams in the league, but their defense got significantly improved in the regular season.
The goals against number went way down.
The goals against number was significantly lower. Their goals against per game, I think, dropped by over almost half a goal per game. It was
over half. Okay.
It was a significant drop from 2019-20 to 2021, and that was what kind of made the difference for the Panthers, was the fact that they were able to keep the puck out of their net this year. But then they got into the playoffs, and obviously they didn't have Aaron Ekblad, who's their number 1 defenseman, former number 1 overall pick. Losing Ekblad, in the second half of the season to that broken leg, definitely played a role in Florida's defensive shortcomings in this playoff series. They certainly could have used him, but just even the guys that were there, nobody played very well defensively for that team. And that definitely kind of left their goaltenders hung out to
Yeah.
dry quite a bit. The number of odd man rushes that the
Yeah.
Tampa Bay Lightning got was just completely inexcusable from Florida's standpoint defensively. They were out of position. They were pinching at bad times. The defensemen were trying to jump up into the play and land big hits rather than playing good positional hockey. And Tampa Bay, I mean, with a team as good as they are, they're going to take advantage of that every time. And they did. They got breakaways. They got 2-on-1s. They got 3-on-2s. And they took advantage of them. They scored a high percentage of those chances. And that's really, I think, played a big role in Tampa being able to take this series the way that they did, was not just the goaltending where Florida could not get those saves that they needed, but the just onslaught of pressure that Tampa was able to put on. And really, Florida left their goalies out to dry.
That would be putting it mildly. When your best defensive player is Gudis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Gudis is not really, I mean, when your best defensive player is Radko Gudis,
he's a third pair defenseman, and he's a guy that I like a lot. He's a very
Yeah.
physical, tough defenseman, but he should be on your third pair. He should not be one of your best defensemen.
So what does that tell you? If he's your best defenseman on the team, you're not probably winning much.
Mackenzie Weegar had a brutal series. And he's probably their number 2 behind Ekblad. Weegar is the guy that was supposed to... Yeah, he's their step up. He's their number 2 D-man. He's the guy that was supposed to be there. Mackenzie Weegar had a brutal series.
Yeah, that would be putting it mildly. So, here we go now. This was this next series that we're going to talk about. I have to say I was very nervous about this. And this was especially after the first couple games, I was like, okay, we're talking about Carolina and Nashville.
Yep.
Carolina did take the win in Game 6 to win the series 4-2.
First time a road team won all series.
First time a road team won all series. And this was another one that almost every one of these games all went to overtime as well.
Yeah, 4 out of the 6 games went to OT.
Okay. So, look, Carolina has one of the best coaches, I think, in the league with Brindamore.
Mm-hmm.
I think all around, I think Carolina is a well-balanced team. They have pretty good goaltending. They have pretty good defense, and they have pretty good offense.
Yep.
They have really good special teams. Okay, for the most part, their penalty kill is really up there, and their power play is up there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here's the thing, though. They ran into a Nashville team that suddenly had 12,000 people in their building.
Yep.
Right? And they were able to take those 2 games in Nashville. Okay?
Yep.
And that's what kind of started throwing everybody, because everybody thought, well, yeah, Carolina's up there in Nashville. But Saros, holy moly, that guy can play goal.
Oh, yeah. Saros was one of the biggest stories of this series.
Yeah.
The only reason this went 6 games, I mean, he flat out kept Nashville in some of these games. His play in net was absolutely superb.
He made the timely saves.
Yep.
He made the big saves.
Yep.
He made the saves when, oh my gosh, oh wow, he made the save.
How did that not go in? I was saying that a lot during this series.
Yes, thank you. A lot of the. How did that? Wait a minute. No, how did that not go in? But the guy made the plays, and Nashville came to play.
Yep.
Okay, they were, it was like a 4-foot fighter going up against a 7-foot tall fighter.
Yep.
And they were jumping up there to punch you in the jaw. And every time they jumped up, they punched you in the jaw. And it hurt. But they were just came a little bit short, I think. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Nashville, this was one of the teams that we felt were going to be big sellers at the trade deadline. They weren't looking that good at the beginning of the year, and even almost to the halfway point, they still weren't really all that good. But, man, towards the end of the season, they just exploded, and I think a lot of it was because of Soros coming in and playing.
And he played a lot. He's funny because he always gets better in the second half of the season. Like, that's been the MO with him for the last few years now, is that he'll struggle out of the gate, and then in the second half of the season, he'll get really hot and really good. And we saw that again this year.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you're winning, you know, as long as you got the team behind you that can keep putting goals in. But, you know, that's the thing that I think was a deal with this series.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time one team scored, the other team would score right back.
Yep. It was very back and forth.
It was. And this was, to me, I thought this was almost as exciting as watching the Tampa Bay, Florida series.
Yeah, it was a fun one. And it was very close throughout for the most part.
Like, there was a lot of penalties in this.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. Okay. And in one game, it was so lopsided that it was ridiculous. 7-3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have a hard time with that. That you're calling 7 penalties on one team and you only saw 3? Really? I bet you if I watched the first period, I bet you I can see more than 3.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, but like I said, you know, if you're going to call it, then call it, and call it for both sides. If you're not going to call it, then don't call it for both sides. You know, and I felt that was one of the cases here with one of these games.
Mm-hmm.
Was that it was a little bit too one-sided, I think. But, you know, that's the games and that's the way it is. And congratulations to Carolina for winning this series. This was a hard-fought
mm-hmm.
series.
Definitely.
For Carolina, because Nashville just kept punching them in the mouth.
Yeah, I think Nashville, despite losing this series, deserves a lot of credit because they made this way closer and way tighter than I thought they were going to. I picked Carolina in 5 in this series. I thought they were going to come in and just kind of clean them out. I thought Nashville would be able to take one at home, sure, make it so that they don't get swept, but I thought Carolina was going to control this series.
Yeah,
was not the case at all. They did in Game 1. The Game 1 was the most lopsided game of the series. Carolina came out, got a big win. And then in Game 2, Carolina won again, and I thought, all right, they're up 2-zip. This is going to be over quick, just like I thought. And then Nashville came back in 3 and 4 and just hung in there, went toe-to-toe with the Hurricanes, was able to win both games in overtime, was able to tie the series up at 2, and all of a sudden you were like, whoa, where did this come from? We have a series here. And
exactly.
Even Game 5 went to overtime, and Carolina had to just pull it out at the end. And that ultimately ended up, I think, being kind of the difference in the series, because then in Game 6, Nashville was on the brink. And again, another overtime win for Carolina right down to the end. But the Canes, I think the Canes winning Game 5 really set them up to win this series.
Yeah, I agree.
That put them in position to be able to come in and just finish it off. And they were able to pull that out despite being down 3-1 to the Predators in game number 6. And I was actually streaming that game last night, and we were talking about it at the start of the third period, or during the third period. We were like, Nashville's sitting back too much here. They've taken their foot off the gas. They're trying to play defense. They're trying to just, protect their own zone. We've talked about this so many times. It doesn't work like that. You have to keep doing what you were doing to get the lead in the first place. You got to keep playing. And if you sit back, it's going to cost you. And it ended up costing the Nashville Predators. And then when we got to overtime, Carolina got that really nice tip in front by Sebastian Aho, goes over the glove of Saros. He can't adjust in time, and the series is over. And Nashville had a chance with that 3-1 lead to just kind of finish it off and put that game away. They couldn't do it. Carolina ends up tying it, and I think that sitting back in Game 6 really hurt the Preds.
There's an old saying that you come to the dance with who brung you.
Yep.
Okay? And if you're coming to the dance and you're running gun and the pedal to the metal, and that's how you're playing the game, guess what? You got to keep going with that dance.
Yep.
Because as soon as you don't, this is what happens.
Absolutely.
Okay, it doesn't matter what sport you apply that to. That, by the way, that's an old John Facenda quote. When you come to the dance, you go to the dance with who brung you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if this is how you're playing, then you need to keep playing that way because that's how you made it. So you got to make it the same way.
Yep.
Got to keep doing it the same way.
I completely agree. I think sitting back gets teams in trouble way more than it actually protects the lead.
I mean, very rarely.
Yep.
Do you see where teams sit back and go, yeah, we're just going to like keep everything in front of us.
Yep.
Yeah. When you try to keep things in front of you, that's usually when you're watching the guy running behind you.
Yeah.
You know? Okay. So.
And obviously, you want to be mindful of defense when you have a lead and you're trying to protect a lead, and you don't want to be too aggressive and jumping up and making dumb pinches and stuff like that.
You got to have your head screwed on.
Yeah, you got to be smart about it. But just the just falling back and going into a complete defense mindset, it always seems to hurt the team.
It kills teams.
It does.
It loses games.
Another example here where it lost a game.
Yep, and a series.
Yep.
And a chance for the cup. I mean, you guys were playing toe-to-toe with Carolina, who everybody is basically saying is either going to make it to the cup or at least push for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So there you go. The next series, I think, is are we okay if we move on?
Yeah. We got 2 series left. Both of these were sweeps, so there's really not a whole lot to go into. These series were pretty much over as soon as they started with the way that it turned out. And Colorado and St. Louis, this is the one that was a complete blowout from start to finish. This series was never even close. Colorado just steamrolled the Blues 4 games in a row. Binnington did all he could to try and keep the Blues in it, but it wasn't nearly enough. St. Louis didn't have nearly enough offense. They eventually broke down defensively and couldn't keep the puck out of their net. Colorado, what a juggernaut they look like so far after this first round, and they just took it to the Blues from start to finish here.
I think this was much needed for Colorado.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not
confidence boost.
Yes, I'm not trying to take anything away from St. Louis. I think St. Louis basically were like, "Oh, we made it."
They look tired. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, we made it. Now what?
And they had injury issues as well. They had guys out of the lineup, and then they had COVID issues as well with David Perron not being able to play. That's a big loss out of their top 6. And he wasn't able to play.
Also, the Falk issue as well.
Falk getting knocked out by Kadri's dirty hit. There's a big guy off of your blue line right there. Nothing against St. Louis. They did what they could, but this Colorado, just the dominant team in this one.
That would be putting it mildly. And the reason why I say I think this, and kudos to St. Louis. You had a lot of COVID. You had a lot of injuries. You played really, really well down the stretch to make the playoffs. So congratulations to that team. I really love Craig Berube as a coach. Mm-hmm. I think St. Louis has a few things to work on, but potentially they can potentially be back. But Colorado, the reason why I think they needed this is because they weren't playing all that terribly well at the end of the season. Right, where Grubauer, they weren't sure if Grubauer was going to be in for some of the last games, which I think he did play the last game.
Yeah, he came back at the end, but he missed he missed, I think, like 3 weeks before that or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, they weren't really playing their best when they came back from their second COVID.
Mm-hmm.
They had lost a couple of games and Vegas had jumped ahead for a little bit. You know what I mean? And they were kind of faltering a little bit. So they didn't really come into the playoffs, shining like a meteor. You know what I mean? Like they kind of like, okay, we made the playoffs, cool. But playing against St. Louis was the perfect match for them because that was able to set the tone for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they used St. Louis, unfortunately. We're sorry, the Blues, but your team got housed.
Yeah.
to put it mildly.
Yep.
And so, but this solidifies my pick in Colorado making it to the Cup with this crushing defeat of St. Louis.
Yes. All right, so that series was over very quickly in 4 games there.
Woo, 4 games for that one, buddy.
Avalanche
Thanks.
moved on. The other series that ended in 4 games was the Winnipeg Jets over the Edmonton Oilers in a 4-game sweep. And this was a massive surprise to me. I did not expect this. This series was almost completely opposite of what I thought it was going to be. I actually picked Edmonton in 5 in this series.
I had Edmonton in 7.
That just not even close here. Oilers were not able to score nearly enough. They collapsed on themselves quite a bit here. Winnipeg, the biggest thing that surprised me about this is that Winnipeg was playing so poorly heading into the playoffs.
Yeah.
They were not playing well in their last 10 to 15 games, and I was like, Edmonton should easily have this. And then the Jets just came out, and it looks like they just flipped that switch. And they were like, okay, it's playoff time now. It's a new season. And boom, Winnipeg just 4 straight.
You know what I think it was, though, to be honest with you? I think it was Hellebuck.
Yeah, he was unreal.
He was unreal in this. And I'm here to tell you, this makes Winnipeg a very dangerous team moving forward because he won the Vezina Trophy last year.
When you get goaltending like that, absolutely.
When you get shut down goaltending like that to the point where you're shutting down the likes of Draisaitl and McDavid and Nugent Hopkins and all them other guys up there, are you kidding? All right. Guess I was wrong about this one too, folks. See, that's why you don't count on me for prognostication.
Yeah.
Because if you want your team to win, you say, hey, Steele, which team are you picking? I'll pick Edmonton. Great. That means Winnipeg's going to win.
Yeah.
See how that works?
Yeah.
So, yeah, 4 games, man, I could not believe. And, you know, we have some close dear friends that are Oilers fans. Mm-hmm. And they were beside themselves. Like the rant that Peyton did the other night was quite amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I've heard one like that in quite a while. And it needed to happen, though.
It's just embarrassing. I mean, you have the guy that scored 105 points in the regular season and gets shut down for the first 2 games. And Draisaitl didn't get going until, really game 3. And the Oilers in game number 3 had a 3-1 lead. Or no, a 4-1 lead. They had a 4-1 lead in that game, and they blew it and ended up losing in overtime.
5 unanswered goals. Like, are you kidding?
Are you serious right now? Like, that is... I mean, it's just embarrassing. I think it really showed the faults with the Edmonton Oilers, and they still... It's the same thing with this team. They do not have the depth. They have McDavid, they have Draisaitl, they have the stars, but they don't have the team around those stars to be able to make any sort of run. This is not the NBA. 2 good players are not going to take you through the playoffs. This is the NHL. It is a full team game. And if you don't have that full team, you're going nowhere. And the Oilers do not have that full team.
That's a great analogy. That is a super great analogy because let's face it, if you have if you have Anthony Davis and LeBron James on your team, you're pretty much
set.
I mean, that's 2 players on the team that are going to probably net you, I don't know, 70 or 80 points a game between the 2 of them. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, right. So, well, gosh, you don't really need many other guys. Right? You only need another 20 points.
Yep.
Well, you can get that from the other 3 guys on the team.
Yep.
And that's not how that works in hockey.
No.
You get that one good player, and if you shut him down, then what? Now who do you got? Right?
For the Oilers, it's nobody, apparently.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yep.
Apparently, nobody. All right. What? Was not really expecting this, man. I had Edmonton selected in 7 because, 106 points, 109 points in the regular season. Are you kidding? And then the other guys on the team weren't all that bad either with the number of points that they had too. I mean, their offense was really awesome. But our beloved Edmonton Oilers fans also were keen to point out that Smith, although played exceptionally well this year for being a 38-year-old goalie, just doesn't have the ways and means to do it in the playoffs, I guess.
I don't think you're going to be winning playoff series with Mike Smith in net.
I mean, they're saying they want to re-sign him. Well, okay, but
that I don't understand. You've got to upgrade in goal if you're going to go anywhere.
Jeez, see, that's what that doesn't make sense to me, folks.
No, it doesn't to me either. But Connor Hellebuck, man, Vezina Trophy. Connor Hellebuck showed up for this series.
He surely did, and that makes Winnipeg
absolutely
much more dangerous.
Yep, very, very much so. All right, so those are all of the series that have been completed up to this point. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a couple of series from the first round that are still underway. And then after that, we will preview the 2 second-round matchups that we know for sure will be happening, which are the Boston Bruins against New York Islanders and Carolina Hurricanes against Tampa Bay Lightning. However, before that, it's time for a word from our sponsor, Canine Country Club Resorts. I want to give a huge thank you to them for all of their support for everything here at Steel Flyers All Sports Network and all that they do for us. So we're going to play their ad now, and we'll talk about the series that are still underway when we get back. Here's a word from CCC Resorts.
Greetings. This is Steel Flyers from the Steel Flyers All Sports Network, and we have 2 very special guests. We are delighted to be joined by Tracy Musser and Nicole Howard from the Canine Country Club Resorts. Tracy and Nicole are both managers for CCC Resorts and work at the Windsor or at the club, one of 2 locations, both in Manheim, Pennsylvania. Congratulations on your 30th year anniversary of being in business. Let me start off by saying this. Steel Flyer stands behind this company 100%. Taking care of Steel Flyer's furry friend for the last 2 years now, and they are a one-stop shop for everything your furry friend needs. In fact, let's find out what our friends at CCC Resorts offer. Nicole, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. What are some of the great boarding services that you guys offer, and what do we have to do in order to get our furry friends taken care of when we are unable to travel with them?
Well, we like to bring everybody in for a tour first. That way they can see the behind the scenes, they can see where they stay, they can see where they play, and then we explain all of the fun things that we can add on to their reservation, whether it be one of our packages, either a nature walk, a ball time, or even a cuddle time.
Oh, wow, that sounds great. Boy, it sure sounds like a resort to me. So how are you today, Tracy?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Tracy, tell me, is it true that you guys have both an indoor and an outdoor pool at the Windsor location?
It is true. We've got one of each, so we're able to offer year-round swimming. The indoor pool is a great option for dogs who are swimming for therapy or rehab. It's got that sloped entry so they can wade into the water. Our outdoor pool is a little bit larger, and it's 4 foot deep the whole way across. Both of them are saltwater pools, so it's really easy on the dog's skin and coat.
Wow, that's very awesome. So then during the summer months, you have a much deeper pool outside and then a sloped entry shallow pool indoors for the dogs. Tracy, tell the folks how we can get some pool time.
Well, the first thing everyone does is come for an intro swim. We use that time to make sure the dog is comfortable in the water. We make sure they know how to get out of the pool safely, and we go over all the pool rules and etiquette with the clients as well. After that, they're able to schedule private appointments where they have the pool to themselves, or they can invite friends and have a whole group swim going on.
So after a dip in the pool, then it would have to be off to the groomers, right? I mean, our furry friends cannot go out looking their best. Nicole, what are some of the great services your top-notch groomers provide?
Our groomers, they specialize in full service grooms. We can do the basics, whether it be just a bath and a brush out or a blowout. Or for the extra pampered pooches, we can do nail Dremels, we can do deodorizing soaks, and also facials.
Wow, man, that sounds like a resort if you ask me. Tracy, I know one of the main programs here at CCC Resorts is the WAGS program. The Steel Flyers dog is enrolled in this program. So why don't you tell the folks what is involved in this and how they can get enrolled?
Yeah, the WAGS program is our primary daycare option at the Windsor. It's designed to be a structured program for people who are looking for a set routine for their dog. They all come on the same days each week, which allows them to have set friends, and we know exactly what's going on with each group. So we do a little bit more activities and we build more into their daily routine there. But we've got other daycare options as well for people looking for a little less commitment. We do an hourly care where you can drop them off and just pay by the hour. We also do a day stay option, which is great for the dogs that prefer human friends instead of making friends with other dogs. And then we have a traditional daycare option as well if you're looking for the occasional outing for your dog.
Wow, there you have it. A full-service groomer, a daycare program, and an indoor and outdoor pool. What more could you ask for? Sure seems like CCC Resorts has everything covered. Remember, DOG, depend on God.
And we are back, everybody. Again, a big thank you to Canine Country Club Resorts for their sponsorship and all of their support for us here at Steel Flyers All Sports Network. But now it's time to talk about the two remaining first-round series that are still underway. They will be finishing up very, very soon. But as of right now on Friday, they are still going on. And we're going to start with the one that has game number 7 tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. The Vegas Golden Knights against the Minnesota Wild. Series obviously tied up 3-3. And this is going to come down to one final game in Vegas to see who moves on to play the Colorado Avalanche and who goes home. Man, Game 7, there's just nothing like it to me, in my opinion, than an NHL game number 7. And I'm really expecting a great, great one tonight. That's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch, and really excited for this game. Man, what a series this has been.
I agree. This has been one of those series where we were like, really? Vegas against Minnesota? Really? Gosh, Vegas in 4?
See, and I didn't think that.
No, I know, but I mean, most people look at it and go, wow, Vegas against Minnesota. I actually did pick Vegas in this series, but let me say this. Minnesota has played so extremely well at the end of the season to not only make it to the playoffs, but get to the higher seeds. You know what I mean? They succeeded in passing St. Louis, so they made it to the 3rd seed.
Yep.
Okay. Minnesota was one of those teams that we didn't really think was going to potentially, if Hellebuck can play, but we weren't really sure, or not Hellebuck. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. We weren't really sure if the goaltending was going to withstand their Talbot. In Minnesota, and then we knew that Lehner and Fleury were gonna, that was the goaltending was definitely towards Vegas.
Yep.
All day long, right?
Mm-hmm.
But see, everybody's like, "Oh, Vegas, Vegas, Vegas," and I'm more all Colorado, 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 and this is why.
Yep.
Because Minnesota is able to hang with Vegas. And Vegas doesn't seem to be able to have some of the answers. Like, I'll give you an example. I think it was the second game, Minnesota scored like 3 goals on 4 shots against Fleury.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, you can't allow that kind of stuff. Look, I'm not saying anything bad against Fleury or Lehner or anything like that, but you can't allow Minnesota to do those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's why I think this series is much closer than what I guess everybody or all of us prognosticators or analysts thought, because Minnesota just seems to match up well with Vegas and takes away Vegas's size advantage.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
They've matched up great with Vegas all season long. Minnesota won that season series by quite a bit, and that's why I had Vegas in 7 in this series. I picked Vegas in 7 games. I thought Minnesota was more than good enough to beat the Golden Knights and to make it a very long series, just like they did in the regular season. And I think Minnesota actually has a really good shot tonight. They have the momentum on their side. Vegas has a bad history with blowing 3-1 series leads. They're potentially going to do that again, depending on how tonight goes. This series has been as close as I thought that it was going to be. Maybe even a little bit closer, because once Vegas went up 3-1, I was like, okay, maybe that, we're not going to get to Game 7. We're not going to go all the way. But then Minnesota came back in Games 5 and 6 and was able to win. And Vegas's offense has really struggled in these playoffs, in this series, and that's something that they were one of the higher scoring teams in the regular season. That is not carried over. Cam Talbot has been awesome in goal. Minnesota has been very good defensively. It's been a low scoring series between the two teams. It's come down a lot to defense and goaltending. And you're right about Vegas does not have a physical advantage against the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota is just as big and just as physical and hard-hitting a team as the Vegas Golden Knights are, and they have been able to play the Vegas very well all season long, and that's carried right over into the playoffs. They are a tough matchup for the Golden Knights, and I think this is a 50-50 game tonight. This is a coin flip as to who's going to come out and win this one. Yeah, I'm really excited for this game because I think it's probably going to be a 1-goal game too.
I'm with you on that. Even though the game's in Vegas, Minnesota has proven that they can win on the road.
Yeah,
Minnesota has proven that they can take 2 games in a row.
Yep.
From Vegas, especially in this series. Because they were down 3-1, they won the last 2 games in a row. Mm-hmm. Can they win this 3rd game in a row and take the series? Even though I have Vegas picked, I'll tell you what, I have to agree with you. I think momentum is on Minnesota's side right now. And with that rookie that they got up there in Minnesota, if this kid even remotely starts to catch fire like he did during the regular season, Vegas is in trouble.
Yeah, and Vegas has had offensive issues in this series. They've had trouble scoring goals. You can definitely tell that they're missing Max Pacioretty. Yeah,
that's the other big thing too. With Pacioretty not being there, a lot of it falls onto Stone. He's playing exceptionally well during the series. But that's a lot. That's a big hole to fill there suddenly now. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of what's hurting Vegas more so than, anything else.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And, man, Minnesota, the way that that team, there is no give up in that Minnesota team. They're such a hard-working, just really grind it out, keep pushing, and find a way to win type of team. And those kinds of teams are tough in the playoffs because they find ways to win. They find ways to steal games, and they're always a tough out. And they are definitely giving the Golden Knights a run for their money here.
I like what Perlo calls them. He calls them that warrior mentality.
Yep.
Right, and definitely Minnesota has the warrior mentality going into the playoffs. And that's what you need. And, 100%. They also have pretty decent momentum, too, because they played really well towards the end of the season. And they were playing teams like St. Louis, like Colorado, like Vegas, that they were playing at the end of the season. And they were winning those games. You know what I mean? And so I have no doubts that this is going to be a 1-goal coin flip game. As much as I'm hoping that Vegas wins that for my bracket, I really think that Minnesota's going to win this. I have that feeling.
I'm not trying to predict this one. I don't know. I think this is a complete toss-up game. I'm starting to get the feeling that Minnesota might steal this series.
If they do, if Minnesota wins,
my bracket is junk.
Yeah, because you had Vegas selected to go all the way, right?
Yeah, I have Vegas winning the cup in my bracket.
Ooh, that would be bad.
Yeah.
Okay, well, like I said, I'm rooting for Vegas because of my bracket, but honestly, I can't. If I had to put money on this, I would have to put money on Minnesota.
And,
even though they're playing in Vegas.
and all the pressure's on the Golden Knights here.
It is.
All the
'Cause
pressure
this is
on
game
Vegas.
7 now.
There is nothing to lose here for the Minnesota Wild. You came out, you made the playoffs, you had a really good season, a lot better than most people expected. You're giving Vegas a very tough series in the first round, so you're already doing better than a lot of people expected of you.
Yeah.
And all the pressure is on the Vegas Golden Knights. You're the team that's supposed to be going deep. You're the team that is, supposed to be winning at home. You're the team that had the 3-1 series lead and has blown it. Like, all the pressure here is on Vegas. And for Minnesota, all they have to do is just go out and play their game. And I'll tell you what, if Minnesota scores the first goal of this game tonight, look out. Because that is gonna be, I think, kind of maybe open the floodgates a little bit. If Minnesota goes out and just takes an early lead in this game, that could spell big trouble for Vegas.
All I care about is that I hope that the referees don't decide this game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This game needs to be decided amongst the players, not amongst the referees. Okay? That's all I can hope for on this game.
Absolutely.
Because it would be a horrible affair if this was one of those ugly, choppy games where there's a penalty called every 5 seconds. You know what I mean? And you just got guys running in and out of the box.
Nobody wants that in a Game 7.
Come on.
Nobody wants that ever, but especially in a Game 7.
I agree. So like I said, I hope that the referees call it equal, call it fair, and, don't be the ones that decide the game. Let the players decide the game on the ice.
Absolutely.
So that's what I have about that. And wow, Game 7. Hey, all right.
Yeah, Game 7 tonight, Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time start time between the Golden Knights and the Minnesota Wild. The other series that is still going on, and I am personally surprised it is still going on.
Me too.
Is the Toronto Maple Leafs versus Montreal Canadiens series. The Leafs have a 3-2 series lead. Game 6 is coming up on Saturday. But I'll tell you, I thought the Leafs were going to finish this off in 5 with the way that game number 4 went, where they just kind of, dominated the game. Montreal did not play well, looked like they didn't even really want to be there. And I thought that the Leafs were going to come out on home ice and just finish it off in game number 5. But big overtime win for the Canadiens to keep their season going here and force a game 6 back in Montreal on Saturday. And we have ourselves a series now between the Leafs and Habs.
Finally, Price. Finally, the youngsters.
Caulfield and Suzuki with the game-winning goal in overtime on a 2-on-0.
Finally,
brutal turnover from Alex Galchenyuk.
I know that was a beautiful 2-on-0 with the give and go.
The give and go is gorgeous. Textbook hockey right there.
Agreed. And there's the goalie has no shot on that.
No chance for the goaltender.
So, however, Campbell hasn't played that horrible.
No, Campbell's played really well.
That's what I mean. He's played relatively well. Quite honestly, I think that the Montreal-Toronto series is probably going to be over on game for the Saturday game.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think Montreal pretty much has exhausted their gas.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. Look, if you look at Montreal, if they would have been in any other division, they wouldn't have made the playoffs. By a long shot.
Yep.
Okay. So the fact that they're even there and playing, you should just be thankful that they divided up the divisions into the North and you were able to make it, because I'm here to tell you. But they played against Toronto relatively. Some of the games they played well against Toronto in the season series this year. You know what I mean? So It doesn't surprise me that Montreal was going to win 2 games. Right? I didn't necessarily see this being a quick series. I think I had this one picked for 6 games.
I had Leafs in 6 as well.
Yeah, but I still had the Leafs, and I still think that's what's going to happen here.
I still have the Leafs in 6.
Yeah, there you go. I'm not taking anything away from Toronto at all. This has been their series. This has been their division. This has been everything for them to lose. Right? They have been at the forefront of the North since the beginning of the season. Okay, and they haven't looked back. And it's been this is their series to lose. And I really hope for Toronto's sake that they win this. Because maybe they won't be known as, oh, you make it to the playoffs, or you make it to the playoffs and you can't do anything once you get there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been the MO for Toronto for how long?
Since 2004 was the last time they've won a playoff series.
Right. So if they come in here and win this, then this is on.
This is very important for the Leafs. They have to win this series.
Because if they don't, I mean, what else can you do up there? I mean,
there would have to be major changes made.
Yeah. I mean, you would have to try to start selling off some assets or something.
You would have to start making significant changes to this group if they lose in the first round again, because that would be, let's see, 2017 when they played the Capitals in the first round?
Yeah,
so. It was 2017, but that was their first time making the playoffs with the Matthews, Marner, this young core. So no one really expected anything of them in 2017, but they lost in the first round, which was expected. 2018, they lose to the Bruins in the first round. And again, that one, very hard-fought series. They're like, okay, come back and try again next year. 2019, they lose to the Bruins in the first round again. And that's when people started talking. And people started being like, okay, like, you keep making the playoffs. You got a really good young team. But now, this group needs to take that next step and win in the playoffs. And then we get to the bubble last year. And they match up in the qualifying round against the Columbus Blue Jackets, who were a much lower seed.
And they had a hard time with that.
And they couldn't score. And they got beat by Columbus. And they lost to the Blue Jackets. And that was, again, what people are like, okay, like, this is a serious problem at this point. Like, you cannot win in the playoffs. You're good in the regular season and then cannot win in the playoffs. And they kept that label through the bubble last year and losing in that qualifying series. Then we have this season happen. They win the division. They're clearly the best team in the North all season long. And they get into the first round against one of their most hated rivals in the Montreal Canadiens. They have to win this series.
I mean, this is the first time that these two have met in 47 years or
Since
something.
1979.
Okay, well, that's a little less than 47 years.
41?
Yes.
Yeah. 42 now?
42 now.
42 now.
Okay, so I was 9 when these two teams last met in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I agree. Toronto needs to win this series, and they need to win it like now.
Yeah.
Okay. They can't have this go to 7. They need to win it in Montreal.
Absolutely. And that would be a big win for them. Just from a mental standpoint of that confidence boost of being like, we finally won a playoff series, so that monkey's off our back. And we did it on the road in Montreal. That's a big confidence boost win if they can pull it off Saturday night.
Exactly. So there you have it. I mean,
this is a huge game.
It is. And I think it's also important, not just for Toronto, but also for Montreal too.
Mm-hmm.
Because, man, what has happened to Montreal? I mean, they started off the season really well.
Yeah,
right?
I think that was kind of a fluke, though, the hot start.
Right. The fact that they made all these moves in the offseason, and we all thought, Montreal isn't going to do nothing because they made all these moves. There's no practice time. They're not going to be able to do anything. They come out and in the first 12 games don't lose in regulation. All right. I guess Montreal's for real. And then after that, the tires started falling off. So to the point, by the time they get to game 28, the coach is fired.
Yep.
What? Fired the coach?
There.
Okay. they still made the playoffs, but like I said, if it wouldn't be for the fact that they were playing in the North, they would not have made the playoffs this year.
Absolutely. They, I think, are the weakest team to get into the playoffs this season.
That would be a good way to put that.
Yeah.
That would be a good way to put that. And it will probably show its ugly head.
But they've given Toronto a pretty good fight so far. Able to come in and steal game one, and then actually both of their wins have come on the road. So they've actually been worse at home than they have been on the road, which you don't see all that often. But I think the ride's over for the Canadiens on Saturday. I think that's it. Toronto's going to do it. They're going to finish it and get that much needed series win finally after all these years.
So we're thinking that Montreal's going to be playing golf after Memorial Day weekend. Then.
Yes.
Okay. I have to agree with you on that. It just doesn't feel like they're trying. Like they're trying, but it just doesn't feel like they have the mentality they don't have that warrior mentality to go up against Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not trying to punch him in the face. They're just trying to be like, score enough goals to escape out of here.
Well, they've been one of the worst offensive teams in the entire playoffs. If you look at the goals for here, or goals for per game, Montreal's out of the 16 playoff teams the worst. They're only scoring 1.6 goals per game.
That's not very good, guys.
That's horrible. That's absolutely horrible.
That's not going to win you many games. 1.6?
No.
How are you going to win games with
that? And that's including the 4 that they scored last night. Ooh. So that boosted their amount too.
Yeah, by a point of a percentage point there or something, I think. Jeez. Okay, well, here you go. So that's Toronto versus Montreal Saturday.
Yes,
for game 6. And we both think that Toronto's going to continue doing what they need to do and march through.
Yes.
Well, there you have it, folks. We've covered we've reviewed the finished ones.
Yep.
And now we've talked about the series that are still underway.
Yep.
Here we go.
Preview time.
Ooh, doggies! 2 series that are going to be starting here really soon. We know for a fact that Boston and New York are going to start Saturday at 8 o'clock.
Saturday night, 8 p.m., Boston and New York. Second round will get underway. I think this is going to be a phenomenal series. This is going to be really, really fun to watch, I think. And given the way that both of these teams played in the first round, Boston's kind of just taking it to the Capitals and finishing them off in 5, and then the Islanders being able to pull off the upset over Pittsburgh, getting the offense going against the Penguins, which is a big key for New York because that can be kind of their downfall at times, is the lack of scoring. And then Ilya Sorokin, I think, is a huge story here because the 2 games that the Islanders lost, he was not in net. They tried to go back to Varlamov for some reason. That move still baffles me. After Sorokin won game 1, they tried to go back to Varlamov, and he was not good. They put Sorokin back in for game 4. Sorokin has not lost in these playoffs yet.
Nope.
And he was a big reason why the Islanders were able to outscore the Penguins and able to beat the Penguins in that first round series because he was phenomenal in goal.
Yeah.
So we got an incredible goaltending matchup here between Tuukka Rask and Ilya Sorokin, who both played awesome in the first round. We have 2 of the best defensive teams in the entire league. I think in the regular season, New York had the 2nd lowest goals against per game in the league. Bruins had the 4th lowest goals against per game in the league. So you have 2 of the best defensive teams. You have 2 kind of middle-of-the-road offenses, but actually scored pretty well in the first round. So they have the offenses going. Very physical teams. This is going to be big boy hockey. This is going to be a physical series.
Bring in the big boy pants for this one.
Absolutely. There's going to be some ice packs needed during this one.
Ice packs? Are you kidding? These guys are going to be dunking into full tubs of ice.
This, I think, is setting up to be a really, really, really good series.
That's a good way to put that, man. Have you ever done that? Have you ever... Okay, so you've had that distinct honor and privilege of climbing into a tub full of ice water.
Yeah.
After the initial shock wears off,
It feels good.
It does. It feels so good. Ice is your friend.
Yeah.
This is going to be one of the, I think as well, this is going to be that same level that I think Florida and Tampa Bay is going to be, where you're going to be able to say, in the first 4 games, 341 hits.
Yeah, I expect that kind of hockey. Absolutely.
Okay. So with that being said, and then the major points that you brought up was that both of these teams are that middle of the road offense.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're not going to be seeing games that are going to be 7-6.
No.
Or you're not going to see games that are going to be 6-5 or that. No.
I'm ready for a lot of 3-2.
Yes.
Yep.
3-2, 4-3, 2-1,
Yep.
that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Exactly. If it might get lucky and you might get a 5-4,
mm-hmm.
but that's only if Taylor Hall maybe decides to put more points on the board.
Yeah.
But at any rate, that's the other thing too that I wanted to talk about. Both teams made some moves at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Where the New York Islanders, their trade deadline players didn't necessarily work out all that well at the beginning.
But now they are.
Now they are.
Boy, did Kyle Palmieri show up for the playoffs.
Hello.
Yep.
Hi there.
3 goals already.
Exactly.
Some game winner too. Some big goals.
And that's what they needed.
Yep.
They didn't really need him during the regular season. They need it now when they're playing. Okay. I also agree too that Boston made some trade deadline moves as well that has been paying dividends for them too.
You could say that. Taylor Hall has been nothing short of phenomenal for the Bruins.
I mean, I remember when we did the show about when we were talking about the trade deadline and we were on the live stream,
mm-hmm.
right? And we were, and then when this trade happened and you were like, yeah, Taylor Hall, well, we didn't pay a lot for him. And well, he hasn't been the best for Buffalo. Well, we'll see. Well, hey, man, what are you talking about him now?
We're seeing.
How do you like Taylor Hall now, buddy?
We're seeing he has been absolutely incredible. And Lazar has been a great addition to the fourth line. Riley's really helped solidify the back end. Like all the Bruins trade deadline moves have worked out as good as you could have possibly hoped. And they played great post-trade deadline in the regular season. That's carried over now into the playoffs. They were able to get by Washington in 5, and this is going to be a big series now against the Islanders because I think it's going to be a very tough series. The Islanders are more than capable, especially with Barry Trotz and their system and their style of play. They are more than capable of being in any series that they have or in against anybody.
Exactly.
And it's going to be interesting to see how the Bruins do against a team that I think is going to play a lot better than the Capitals did.
And also, I think this is not the team that you guys wanted to see per se. I think you would have much rather wanted to see Pittsburgh.
Well, looking at how the goaltending went, yes. Hindsight, yes.
The reason why I say that though is because Boston has played better against Pittsburgh per se this past year than they have against the Islanders.
Yeah, the Islanders did very well against the Bruins in the regular season, except for the post-trade deadline. The Bruins won all 3 matchups post-trade deadline.
Okay, but that was, Anders Lee was down, and they were still trying to get their new acquisitions.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the regular season matchups too closely here because I think both teams are in very different spots right now than where they were in the regular season.
Agreed. But with what you're saying about with Sorokin playing so amazing,
this goaltending matchup is going to be incredible.
I still have to give the edge to Tuukka Rask.
Yeah.
The only reason why is because Tuukka Rask has that experience and because he's been there, done that.
Yep.
Okay. And not take anything away from Sorokin at all, because if it wouldn't be for him, the Islanders would not be where they are right now.
No, if they kept Varlamov in, that series was over. Pittsburgh easily would have taken that series.
Exactly. So this is what I didn't necessarily have Pittsburgh or had New York Islanders picked for this matchup, I had Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought Pittsburgh was going to beat the Islanders. But lo and behold, I have underestimated once again. And the Islanders with Barry Trotz, you cannot underestimate this team.
Yep, you can never count out a Barry Trotz coach team in the playoffs. You just can't.
Nope. And I thought, wow, man, Pittsburgh was coming in on fire. They had won the division. They had, Jeff Carter was part of the team, and they were playing really well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they were able to overcome their deficiencies by playing a good enough game to score the points.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, unfortunately, the Islanders exposed that, and they weren't able to come back with those points because Crosby wasn't there, and the rest of the big line for the Penguins wasn't there. So New York Islanders have to do basically the same thing against Boston that they did against Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
You got to shut down Marchand. You got to shut down Bergeron. You got to shut these guys down, because if you don't, then it's bad juju.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things that I'm looking forward to seeing how it works out in this series is, can the Islanders keep the offense up against the Bruins the way that they did against the Penguins? Because, listen, New York's a team that certainly has their offensive issues at times. Now, they did not in the first round against the Penguins. They scored a lot of goals. But they were helped out a lot by Tristan Jarry being absolutely horrendous in that series.
That's not the case in Boston.
I don't think Tuukka Rask is going to be like Tristan Jarry in goal. And the other thing is that the Bruins are a significantly better defensive team as a whole than the Pittsburgh Penguins are. So I am really interested to see what the Islanders offense is able to do against Boston compared to how much they were able to score against Pittsburgh. But that, I think, had a lot to do with Pittsburgh being not good at keeping the puck out of their own net, whereas Boston is.
Right. And that's where I think that's going to be the significant part of this series here, because I think Boston is going to be able to weather that storm much more so. And New York, when you look, they can score goals, but you're going to need to be able to do it against Boston.
Yep.
Okay. Because Boston, I don't think is going to be sitting back.
No.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I still have Boston making it out of the East.
Yeah, I did my series preview for this series yesterday, and I said Boston in 6 is my prediction for this one. I just don't think that the Islanders are going to be able to score enough against the Bruins.
I have to go 7.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a long series. It's going to be a very hard-fought one. I'm expecting it to be really close. Islanders certainly have a shot. I mean, they have a chance against absolutely anybody in the postseason. But for my prediction, I am going Boston in 6. I just don't think the Isles are going to be able to put up the same amount of goals that they did against the Bruins that they did against Pittsburgh, because I think the Bruins are a lot better defensively, and that is going to end up being the difference in the series, and the Bruins are going to be able to take this one. But it's going to be really close and very hard fought all the way through.
I also think this is going to potentially be one of the best matchups in the series in all of the playoffs so far, next to the potential one coming out west.
Yeah.
And then the one that we're going to talk about next is a really super awesome one.
That's a good one too, for sure.
It's like we've been handed this awesome gift. It's like Christmas every day. We just get to look and go, oh, Carolina is going to play Tampa Bay in the second round. Oh, thank you, Christmas. Boston's going to play New York Islanders in the second round. Oh, thank you, Christmas. Right? We're going to probably see Colorado and Vegas in the second round. Oh, thank you, Christmas. What
a matchup that will be.
Oh, my gosh. This Carolina-Tampa Bay matchup, though, man, has me dancing in the streets, can we say? I really want to see Carolina take this.
I do too. In my bracket, I had this matchup, and I had Carolina winning it and going to the Final Four. And I would love to see the Canes be able to go deep, but Tampa is going to be tough.
Yep.
I mean, obviously the defending champs, they are playing very, very well. They've kind of flipped that switch come playoff time where they've gotten back into playoff mode very quickly, and they are ready to go. And I think this series is going 7. Whichever way it goes, I think this series is going 7.
Yeah, I have them in 7. I have Carolina in 7. But here's the other thing, too, where Tampa Bay is going to face a much different team here in Carolina than they did in Florida. Carolina's defense is much more solid.
Yep.
And I think I think Nedeljkovic is gonna still be able to be a really good goalie here for Carolina as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
I think that Vasilevsky needs to keep those goals down.
Yep.
If he can do that, then I think Tampa Bay has a shot. But if Carolina's able to come in and score on Vasilevsky, then that's going to be a problem.
I think this is going to be a lower scoring series than what we saw between Tampa Bay and Florida. Tampa and Florida was a very high scoring series. I don't think you're going to see that here. I think with the goaltending, with these two teams and their ability to play defense, I think they're going to play a lockdown game against each other.
Exactly. It's going to be a puck possession.
Yep.
Puck possession game, keep away from the other team, and I think you're going to see a lot of bodies banging.
Absolutely.
More so than I think we saw in the Tampa, Florida. I just do. Because Carolina has that mentality.
It's going to be hard to be more physical than Tampa and Florida.
I know.
I definitely think it's going to be at that level, and there's
that's what I mean. There's
definitely going to be that physical element to this series. 100%.
Going to be at that level.
Oh,
yes. Yeah. We're probably going to go. There's probably going to be multiple hundreds of hits in the first couple of games in this series too. So that's how is Carolina going to be able to handle the likes of Stamkos and Kucherov? How is Tampa Bay going to be able to handle what Carolina's going to throw at them?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The season series with these two teams, these were hard-fought games.
Yeah, I think they both There was split. They both won 4 games in the regular season against each other.
Exactly. So these were hard-fought games, and this is Carolina's going in as the higher seed.
Yep, they have home ice.
That, to me, I think, is going to be the key in this series. Whoever has that final home game, which is Carolina.
And Carolina has not lost at home yet in these playoffs.
And I don't see that happening anytime soon, especially now that they're allowed almost to full capacity now down there in Carolina.
Yep.
Right. And Tampa Bay, I think they're in the same boat too.
Yeah. A lot of the teams now are almost full or getting close to full.
Close to that. Yeah. I think the Pittsburgh game had 75% capacity or something like that.
Boston will have full capability starting tomorrow.
There you go. So there you go. That's awesome sauce. And that's the other thing that I wanted to point out about these playoffs is that these playoffs have a much different feel than the ones from last year.
Yeah, it's just so much better with the fans and just the energy and the intensity and everything that having the fans there brings to the game. It's not even close.
No. You look at the Montreal-Toronto series and the Winnipeg-Edmonton series, and you still see the gray sheets.
And the no fans, no noise, no anything. It's not even remotely similar. Like you're not even watching the same sport. The games where the fans are nuts are just so much better.
I agree. And that, people say it's a cliche where, the teams feed off of that. Well, let me tell you something. It's a whole different ball game. See what I said there? A different ball game. When you go to a football stadium, you go to a football stadium, and most football stadiums are 65,000 people and above.
Yep.
And you have the field in the middle, and then you're probably half of that field away before you're even getting to the first row of stands. Right? So there's a lot of space in between where the fans sit and where the game is actually happening.
Yep.
Hockey is much more intimate. You have 19,000 people, and you are sitting right up next to the bloody ice.
Yep.
Okay, so when the guy comes and hits the board, you have to back up because that board is going to flex and knock your knees in a little bit, right? Okay, you don't get that in football. You don't get that with too many other sports where you're sitting that close to the action.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think playoff hockey is a whole different ballgame when it comes to having the fans in the stands.
Yep.
Because you're right there, you're right on top of the action, and there's so much emotion, not just from the teams, but from the fans.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's palpable. You can feel it.
Yep.
All you have to do is go to a game, and you can feel it. You can watch it on TV, and you can see the people that are there at the stands. They're all dressed in yellow. They're all dressed in white. They're all wearing the rally towels. They're all swinging the things or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever thing you got for your team is what you're doing.
Yep.
Right? That right there, I think, has helped propel some teams, has really shined through that home ice advantage now this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. The fans make a huge difference without a doubt. And just the whole energy of everything, the whole atmosphere is so different and so much better with them all there. It's awesome. And it's awesome to see the buildings getting back close to full, or in some cases getting back to full. Because that's just the noise and having all those people there and everything together is just an incredible thing to watch. And even when you're watching on TV, you can see and feel the impact that the crowd has.
Exactly. When Carolina scores and the sea of red explodes, I mean, how could you not cheer on the Hurricanes when that happens?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, come on. When I don't know. This is the first time that I've ever really watched the playoffs as a hockey fan.
Mm-hmm.
I have been watching the Flyers for most of my human life.
Yep.
Okay. Since the early 90s.
Yep.
All right. Now, okay, I'm a little bit older and I've been around a little bit longer. But I've been following the team now for probably, well, let's just say over 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if my team wasn't on, I didn't even have the TV on. I wasn't watching hockey because I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But now I'm looking at it with a whole new set of eyes where I get excited to see other guys score on other teams.
Mm-hmm.
I get excited now about the fact that I'm watching hockey.
Yep.
And I think it was because I took it for granted that I didn't get. And then when I didn't get to watch hockey, mm-hmm. there for that 142-day stretch last year.
Yep.
That really gave me a deeper appreciation for the fact that we get to have sports here in this country.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the fact that we are able to have these kinds of things happen in this country, that's very blessed and very lucky.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So the fact that we're getting fans back has really changed the feel of these playoffs significantly.
Absolutely.
And hopefully it raises the bar here to where, or not raises the bar, but hopefully it allows some of these teams to rehire these concession stand people and mm-hmm. and being able to give them back their jobs and allowing them to provide for their families. I mean, mm-hmm. we look at, hockey, and you look at, this player's making $9 million a year and everything like that. Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes into a hockey team.
Oh, yeah.
And the medical staff and the trainers and all that other stuff. But what people don't realize is that, the man or the woman that's back there slinging the pretzels mm-hmm. or slinging the sodas or making the sandwiches or spinning the cotton candy or, whatever.
Yep.
And when there's no fans in the stands, those people aren't working and aren't earning money.
Yep.
So that's why I'm really grateful to see the fans back in the stands so that money can be generated here for these folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is better with the fans back across the board, and that is certainly the case. And it's great to see that so many of these teams are getting fans, and not just some fans, but large capacity amounts of fans back into the
like
building.
Thousands of people.
That's a really, really good sign for the NHL. So Carolina and Tampa Bay, our other second round matchup that we know for sure is going to happen. We don't have a start date yet on that. NHL is really taking the schedule making day by day with the way that they've been doing it in these playoffs so far. You really only find out about a day or two in advance.
I mean, yeah.
But
here's the other thing too that we didn't talk about. Boston's been sitting now for how many days?
Would they win it
Sunday,
on Sunday night? So
right?
It's been almost a week.
Almost a week. How long has Carolina been sitting?
Near
a week.
Well, no, Carolina just won.
Oh, not Carolina, Colorado.
Colorado's been sitting for a week too. Yes.
Right. Okay. Islanders only a couple of days.
Yeah.
Carolina
just won last night.
Right. Okay. So there you go. But those factors, I think, Boston's sitting for that amount of time and Colorado's sitting for that amount of time. How is that going to affect them moving forward?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be good for both teams because Colorado had a couple of injuries that they were dealing with, and now they're going to be able to have that rest to get back.
Yep.
Same thing, I think, with Boston. You get a little nicked up, you get that extra couple of days to rest, and here's the other thing I think that's going to be really important too, and this is why I don't think it's going to affect the teams. They're going to have some practice time.
Yep.
Hasn't been a lot of that this year.
Has not been much practice time this year.
Nope. And to get the guys out on the ice for some practice, I think that's going to bode well for both of these teams, Colorado and Boston, which is why I have them moving on.
Yeah, I definitely could see that for sure. But those are our next round matchups, and we'll find out who Colorado is going to play tonight. As we'll have Game 7 between the Minnesota Wild and Vegas Golden Knights at 9 p.m. tonight. I'm going to be streaming that game and cannot wait for that one. That's going to be a whole lot of fun.
Going to be exciting.
And then Toronto and Montreal, that game will be Game 6 coming up on Saturday. They're trying to figure out who's going to move on to face the Winnipeg Jets in that one. Winnipeg's been sitting for a long time as well.
And they're still sitting.
Yeah. And they're waiting for Toronto and Montreal to finish their series up. So still some things to be worked out here at the end of the first round, and then we are getting into the second round as these NHL playoffs here roll along in 2021. But that is going to bring us to the end of our show here, episode 22 of the Off the Wall Hockey Show. It's a hockey show for hockey fans. Steele, once again, a big thank you for being on the show. Of course, Always. It was great to have you here.
Yeah.
And, really excited for another week of playoff hockey coming up.
Especially this weekend, gonna find out who does what. We're also going to see the start of the second round. I'm really excited about the Boston-New York Islanders game.
Yep.
Can't wait to see that happen, and we're one step closer to the Cup. So keep it rolling, baby. Keep it rolling. Thank you very much to our sponsors, cccresorts.com. Check them out on the web or check them out on Facebook. Just remember that the pool is now open, so you can get your pool time scheduled. They also do daycare, spa treatments, and the whole 9 yards. They take care of your pet from top to bottom. Check them out on the web at www.cccresorts.com. Also, you got to check out John's streams, man. You got to be on them. Off the Wall Hockey. He's the man. We don't call him the greatest of all time for nothing. When he does streams, man, that's where it's at. That's what you need to be doing. You got to check him out. Also, check out John on the Black and Gold Weekly. That's the show he does for the Boston Bruins, so you got to check that out as well, too. Also, check out all the rest of the stuff from Off the Wall Hockey on www.steelflyers.com/link/offthewallhockey.
And that is going to do it here for episode number 22, everybody. Part of the Steel Flyers All Sports Network here, Off the Wall Hockey Show, a hockey show for hockey fans. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We really, really appreciate you guys that watch and support each and every week. It really does mean a lot. This show would not happen without you.
Nope. Thank you very much.
Next week, we'll be back with episode 23 and a whole new week of hockey to talk about and a lot more playoff action.
Edition.
Yeah, another
playoff edition.
Another playoff edition coming up next week. So thank you guys again so much. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.